Hi everyone. Welcome to this Q&A session of the Banguoja Audio Festival. My name is Karolis Vyšniauskas, and I'm here with Jonathan Zenti, an independent radio and podcast producer based in Milan, Italy. Hi, Jonathan.
Hi, thank you for hosting me.
Thank you for being here. And a little information about you for those who want to learn more about your work. So Jonathan Zenti has been a finalist at Prix Italia and Prix Europa festivals. He's also a winner at the Third Coast International Audio Festival in Chicago. And Jonathan has also co-founded MIRP, Meeting of Independent Radio Producers. And in this year's program at Banguoja Festival, we will have Jonathan's work called I Am Analog. So, Jonathan, really good to have you here. And just to tell us more about where are you now? Where did we catch you?
So right now I'm in Venice, Italy, because I have a very close friend of mine, and she has a cat. So every year when she goes on vacation, she asks me to do cat sitting. And Venice is the town where I studied, and it's not far from my hometown. So once a year I come here a couple of weeks to do some cat sitting and enjoy the city. So right now I'm in Venice, but I live in Milan. I used to live in Rome before because I was working for public radio in Italy, and basically all the studios and offices are there. And I moved back to Milan in 2019 because I was working more with podcasting rather than public radio. So I could move a little bit around, and everything was happening in Milan. So I decided to move back to Milan, and I'm living there since then. So it's almost 4 years now, 4 years. And I have my own little studio. I work by myself and collaborating with other people, but I don't have like a big studio with producers and like a company like other people are having right now, that everything is bigger. I still prefer to work in my own lab and collaborating with other people on different projects, and that's it.
Yeah, it's interesting because you used to work for Italy's public radio, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Yeah, I used to, but in a very, I would say, not regular / illegal contract situation for a long time. So I wasn't a full-time employee. I was a contractor, and I could work on different programs, but there was like a kind of a turnover of freelancers that was not very healthy, especially when you start growing up. So it's a good thing to do when you are young and you want to learn and you want to do stuff, but then it became harder and harder to work full-time there. But I'm still collaborating with, there's a documentary, radio documentary slot that I'm still collaborating with. There are amazing people working there that I love to work with. So I'm still collaborating with Italian public radio, but I'm not working daily with them full time. Yeah.
But you have your own studio, and that's where all the magic happens. So this is, I guess that's how a lot of producers work these days, and I guess that's how I Am Analog became a thing that we are showing at the festival. So it has deep roots in Italy and in the northern part of Italy where you grew up. As I understand, this work is first of all, it's a great story, but also it's part of you discovering more about the place where you grew up. That's how I read it. Tell us more about it. How did I Am Analog became a thing?
So I think the recordings I started making they are from 2014, because at that time I've been asked by the Italian channel of Swiss Public Radio. So Switzerland, they have 4 languages and 4 public services, both TV and radio in the different languages. And so the Italian channel asked me if I wanted to do something for a slot they had at that time that was called Blue Like an Orange. And they were 5 minutes documentaries, and from Monday to Friday. So I was supposed to do 5 episodes, 5 minutes long. And at that time, I was talking a lot with my grandma, that she was becoming older and older. And I was talking a lot with her about the traditions that have roots in both Catholic habits, but also like pagan and popular traditions and gestures and stuff, and they are a combination of both of them. And so I decided to do these. There's a lot of little portraits about these different habits that has roots in ancient cultural history. And one of these episodes was about this practice that it's related to Saint Anthony. There are different Saint Anthonys in Catholic culture. This one is Saint Anthony's from Padua, that is a city near my hometown. My hometown is Verona, so everything is based on northern east of Italy. So where Venice is, my hometown is Verona, and it's a very Catholic, rural area. It used to be, then it became industrial after the World War II, but with a lot of agricultural tradition also in the family habits and this stuff. And this is something that was very common in my family, like my parents, my relatives, when they lost something they couldn't find anymore, whatever, like a ring, something that has a value usually, so a ring or something made of gold or money or whatever, you call some ladies and you ask them to tell these prayers, called the sequeri, dedicated to Saint Anthony from Padua. And if the object that you have lost didn't cross the water, meaning that the object didn't go across a river or a sea or whatever, you will find it. And so I needed an excuse to make this recording, because I needed to go to this old lady, ask her, oh, I lost something, can you? And I haven't anything that I had lost at the time. So I kept thinking, like, what can I ask her? And then I remember that I had a t-shirt that I used to wear when I was playing music. It was a red t-shirt with a yellow sign in it saying, I am analog. And as I had like a indie-tronic music project where I was playing with analog synthesizer. I remember that I used to wear that t-shirt during the concert. Then I couldn't find it anymore, and just because I move once a year, basically, I used to move once a year at a time. I say probably I've lost it in one of my movings. I don't know where it is. So I made up that thing, and I said, I went to the lady with the recorder and everything and said, I lost this shirt that was very important to me. Can you say the prayer so I can find it? And she said the prayer, but I really didn't care about the object itself. It was just an excuse to make a recording. Then I did my documentary for Swiss Public Radio. It was aired. So the first documentary that I made for the Swiss Public Radio was just this lady explaining me these prayers and saying the prayers, and that was it. And I completely forgot about that. Like I sent my invoice, they paid me, and that was all. And then 1 year later, I met up with some friend of mine who lives in Nairobi, Kenya. Used to live in Nairobi, Kenya at that time. And once a year in the summer, when they were coming back to Italy to visit their parents, we used to have a pizza together one night and meet once a year. And one night we met 1 year later, the next summer, and this friend of mine, she came to the appointment with that T-shirt on, and she said that I left that T-shirt at their place in Nairobi 5 years before, and she always forgot about taking this shirt for me. But she didn't listen to the documentary at all. It was just like, I don't know, someone would say like a miracle, or but yeah, something like oh, what? Okay, I just asked a lady last year to say a prayer about this. What a chance! And then I realized, oh my God, I can put these two things together, because then something happened with the T-shirt. So I am analog. The short that I made for this festival in Ireland, that's called HearSay, and you can apply to that festival. They have an award that is quite important for the makers, because it's a very nice festival to be in. And the rule of the award is that your piece has to be original or coming from another longer piece, but it has to be 7 minutes long. And so I said, okay, I can try to bring the recordings back that I did at the time, because I had like more than 3 hours of recording with the lady, and for my documentary I used just 5 minutes of them, and then work a little bit on the second part of the story when my friends arrived with the T-shirts, and then my relationship with St. Anthony, and so that's how the full story came up. So I made it for this festival HearSay, and then I won one of the awards there, that piece.
Yeah, it's a beautiful piece, and there's so much of it, even though there's so much in it, even though it's only 7 minutes. It's a tough task to tell a story in such a short amount of time. And usually when we talk about podcasts, about audio, there's this almost like a cliche that podcasts run forever, and no one really cares about the length. But like we all like you use the concept of like short films, let's say, but short audio is still kind of, and it's not that widely discovered form of audio storytelling, but you really managed to it seems that you feel comfortable with it. Can you tell more about your process of how do you tell a story when you have a limited amount of time in audio?
So by nature, as you probably have already guessed, I'm very talkative. So when I do not have limits, I tend to be very long. So for example, now I have a podcast in Italian that it's self-produced, and I make episodes that are 1 hour and a half long, 2 hours sometimes. So I also, as a listener, like long documentaries. But a good training on that was that I produced radio documentaries for Italian public radio for a long time, and their slot format is 5 episodes, 14 minutes long. So whatever the story I was working on, I had to structure them as a series of 5 episodes, and every episode has to close in 14 minutes. So whatever topic I was talking about, I needed to do it in 14 minutes. And then I had along the way other chances, like the slot for Swiss Public Radio that it's 5 minutes each. And I remember that I was reading or watching shorts movies or reading very short stories. There's one of my favorite writers in Italy. His name is Achille Campanile, who made like these theater dramas of 1 page. And so there's this book with, I think, almost 200 stories, 1 page each, and they have there's an evolution of the story inside. You can see the beginning, the crisis, the middle, and the end, but everything is very tiny. It's like working on a bonsai tree, where you have to work on the little details and not to work on like very long or hard structure. And you have to take some shortcuts. For example, I remember that one of the challenges that I had in the I Am Analog piece is that I needed to say that 1 year was passed from the prayer to the t-shirt showing up. And of course, when you work with audio, you have to work with content and perception at the same time. So you have to tell people things, but you also have to make them feel the things that you're saying, because they cannot go back, you can't repeat. So you have to use both the direction, words and feelings. And so I asked myself, how can I say very quickly that a year was passed, but at the same time make them feel that a year was passed? And so I created this like 40 seconds montage of sounds of the seasons, from autumn, like walk, and all the sounds are handmade. So I remember that I made the piece, I think in the summer, if I'm not wrong, at the beginning of the summer. So I dried some leaves, and then I stepped on them, and then I recorded a fly in a box, and then then I made a little fire, and then to recreate the sounds of the autumn, the winter, the spring, and then the summer again. That's when the t-shirt showed up. So you have to take like these shortcut tunnels to say something. So you have to say that a year was passed, but you can use just 30 seconds, and then you have to be creative on that. And for example, and now my income comes most of the time from podcasting, and they literally ask you to make minutes out of nothing. So you have to be long in order for the shows or the companies to place advertisement inside, and you have stories that sometimes they're not very good, and you have to stretch them in 8 episodes, 1 hour long. And it's like putting water in the wine most of the time, and you have to find a combination where the wine is still not bad or good, even though you are putting water in it. This kind of work is just reverse. It's like to make a liquor out of potatoes. It's like to make vodka. So you have to start from a huge amount of material, and then work on them and make them stronger, and take a lot of things out in order for the shots that you have at the end, it's strong. and you can enjoy it in a short amount of time. It's true that podcasting has quite lost this habit because of the economic reasons that I said, but there are still examples that are great, and one among them is this show from the BBC that it's called Shortcuts, that it's made by Falling Tree, that it's a British production company and curated by Eleanor McDowell, and I think that it's like 7-8 years that they're doing that every year, and there are at least 10-15 pieces that I've heard in that program that are among the best that I've ever heard in my life. And the fact that you ask to a producer to test himself or herself or themselves with a very short time, sometimes the ideas that come out of this cage of short timing can take the best out of a producer, because it's like it's like a little shot of what a producer can do, and you feel everything in a very tiny space of time.
Yeah, and as a listener, you actually, I felt like I'm more focused when I know that every second, like, I know that when there's such a little amount of time where you have, so I know that what you actually put there in those 7 minutes, it had to be there. There was a reason that exists. So I think as a listener, you also kind of, your perception is a bit different. And but talking about a little bit longer piece, Host your, I guess, most well-known work, at least among the English-speaking listeners. It's the piece that got you a Third Coast Award in Chicago, and it's a very rare occasion when an European production from someone for whom English is not a mother tongue really worked so well in the American context. So I'm curious to learn more about that. Like, how did you make that connection? But also, before we go in deeper to that, I'd like you to talk a little bit more just about the piece itself, because for those who haven't listened, it's the piece where you very openly you take yourself, your own body as a subject, and you become very open about it. But it's also it's very powerful work, but it's also quite funny and very enjoyable, even though it tackles very big questions about our bodies, about acceptance, about love, and it's just, there's so much in it, and you just manage to play with it in a very interesting way. So if you could tell more about that piece, how did you decide to just go that route, to kind of put yourself out there? And so there's one part of the question. Another part is, how did you get those people in the US to recognize that, to actually know that this thing exists?
So everything started from the meeting that you mentioned before when you introduced me, MIRP, the Meeting of Independent Radio Producers. That was this gathering that we started with other colleagues from other countries in 2015, and we're still doing it once a year. And it was a time when the period of the history of audio that we call the radio revolution, so everything that happened between 2008-9 to serial, basically, the movement was expanding. So it started in the US, and then it started expanding in other countries. And there was this moment between 2012 and 2015 where people wanted to cross the borders of their own radio and start to know each other. It's a moment where a platform called Radio Atlas started, curated again by Eleanor McDowell, where they were translating radio pieces from different languages into English with English subtitles. So there was like this movement of people who wanted to know each other. And at the first gathering we had in 2015, someone dropped on the I at that time I was doing some recordings about body possession. So when someone thinks they own someone else, so there was like sex, slavery, like different kind of topics. And someone I met there just dropped on the table, oh, there's this contest that Radiotopia, the recently born podcast network in US, just launched for a new show. You should try to apply for that. So I applied for this contest in the United States that was called Podquest. And the idea was this podcast called Meet, that should have been a podcast about the relationship we have with our bodies, and our bodies shapes the life that we live. And there was, I think, 1,600 something submissions, and then I got among the 10 semi-finalists, and then among the 4 finalists. And when you were one of the 4 finalists, you had like this 6 months training on podcasting, going back and forth to United States and doing seminars and stuff. And then eventually one of the 4 finalists would have won 5 years of financing. I didn't win. The shows that won was HearSay. That is a show that it's all made in the San Quentin prison.
Oh,
but for
HearSay.
me, yeah,
wow, that's a great show, and I guess pretty well known. So that was the part of the same community. Okay.
And the curator of this whole operation was Julie Shapiro. That she's a great curator and one of the person who knows audio the best. Like, she's really great in knowing what works and what not. And she basically listens to she listens to everything that is made in the world. And she made like this very cozy and brotherly environment among our finalists, so we all became friends eventually. And so it was, for me, I didn't win, but I was so happy that I've been part of that, and at the same time so overwhelmed, because it was everything was new for me, and we had this very short amount of time, short for me, not for the industry, to make the 3 episodes for this final stage. And the story of how people relate to my body, as I am a overweight person, and how I relate to my body because I became overweight. I wasn't born that way. There was a moment in my life where that thing happened and I didn't know how to cope with that. It was in the line for a while. I wanted to talk about it for a while, and I felt somehow that was the right time. The good thing that happened, and I didn't think about that while I was doing, I just realized that afterward, is that I didn't have any other options. Like, I had to do that in English, of course, and I had to be somehow bold about it. One thing that I'm happy about it, that I realized later, like I didn't choose that, but it just happened, and I'm happy about that, is that I didn't make of my language and my accent and my mistakes and my broken English something exotic. So the piece is not about me not being a native English speaker. it's about something else. But because the other thing that I'm talking about, it's quite clear and precise and strong, you forget about it. Has a meaning, so you forget about the voice that is telling you that. You forget about the accent, and so I never had any, I would say, either any any comment about that. Like nobody even said, "Oh, I like your accent," or something like that, or "I don't like it." It was just like talking about something else, and that went out of the way. The thing that happened later is that feeling that there was at that time with the podcast industry kind of got lost a little bit. So one of the reasons why also people from other countries started doing stuff in English was to get out from limited environments that they had in their countries. I remember, for example, colleagues living in France where there was a decent amount of money for audio, but you couldn't do anything new, and so they were trying to do stuff in English in order to enjoy this kind of feeling of revolution and doing something new. But then when, for example, big companies like Spotify started to put some of the money at a local level, this kind of feeling kind of got lost. And for me, for example, I'm not doing stuff in English that often as I used to be, because I have stuff that I can do in Italian. I have an audience in Italy. My podcast that is very demanding production-wise. That means I need to take a lot of time and to write it and produce it, because it's very complicated. It's in Italian, but I have 10,000 people that listen to every episode. So before podcasting, I had probably like few hundreds. And so now it has a meaning also to do something in local language. And so I'm not producing stuff in English that often anymore. And it's something that it's a condition that has been created by the market.
But when I was listening to Hostmeet, as you said, even though I never also thought about your pronunciation or what, I thought it was just very natural. And also as an Italian, you weren't expected to talk about like Italy related things. It was just you were a human talking about the human things, and I love that you weren't put in. You didn't need to put yourself in some kind of box to for your work to speak with people. So I still want you to explore this a little bit more of what it meant for you to put your personal story in, to make it very public, very open, very vulnerable, but also kind of you managed to own it and to make it very relatable for, I guess, a lot of people with different body types. People, it just somehow spoke the sentiment that you put out there. So I was, for example, me coming from a journalistic perspective, I studied journalism, and you always think that you yourself, you're not a story. Other people are. You tell their stories, and you're just a medium, basically. You're just vehicle for their stories to shine. But what it meant for you to take yourself and kind of make yourself a story, guide us through that process. What did you learn from that?
So it's something that it's very natural to me. I've always done it. My first documentary that I did in 2007 was about the last weeks of my grandfather before he died, and I was recording what was happening in my family, and I was talking about my feelings and my thoughts about it. For me, it's very natural, and I kind of gave it a structure along the way. because it doesn't work all the time for all the stories, for example, and the very risky part of it is that you the act of crafting a story, it's a very powerful tool also for yourself. So there's a high risk that you use, for example, if you have a 30-minute slot on a radio, that you use that slot to talk about your business and your feelings, like to use it as someone would say in a therapeutic way. They always ask me in interviews and stuff like, is it therapeutic to write about your personal stuff? No, it's not. It's painful, and sometimes it messes it up more than going talking about other people. But the focus of my stories and my documentary have always been the relationship with the other person, and no matter the topic, what I was focusing on has always been how people interact with each other, how they build something or they make something collapse with the way they encounter with each other. And so for me, it's kind of not just natural, but mandatory that I do the first step. So if I want to meet someone in the way, I have to do the first steps in the direction of that person. And one of these first steps is to open up something about myself, and that, but it's not liberating myself. It's to give it a form, to give it a shape, and also to being able to see yourself from a distance. Also using one thing that for me, it's very important. It's working with editors because they can help you to see yourself from a distance. So, for example, the Host Fat episode, I work with Katie Fitzgerald, who is an amazing radio producer, and she has been great as an editor because she pointed corners and dark angles that I couldn't see by myself. And we took them away, and the piece became like literally 5 times stronger than it was in its first draft. So I still feel the reason to do it. I also like to work on other type of documentary where I do not talk and I just stitch together the recordings. But there are certain topics, certain moments where for the audience, I think it's important to hear that someone is brave enough to open himself up about something that is dangerous or that it's painful, and so they can feel that they can do the same thing without risking anything. And for me, I still do it, and I still see a reason for doing it.
Yeah, like if you expect that from other people, you should kind of lead by the example. We almost ran out of time, Jonathan, but I want to ask you the very last question. So you're not only a producer, but you're also a teacher. You teach other people how to make audio. So I know that at Banguoja Festival, a lot of people are new to audio. The whole audio scene in Lithuania, it's growing. A lot of people try to experiment in it. There's so much. I know that there are a lot of people who can become great creators if they continue doing that. So as someone who teaches audio, what do you tell them? What do you tell those people who come to you for advice? How do you become good at this format?
I have to admit that I do not know that. And also, I know that I teach because I know that I go to class every year and they keep asking me to do it, but I don't know if I am effective. Or I don't know what, like, I can see, because, for example, I teach in an art academy and the course is mandatory, so they cannot choose the course. And I can see that every year there are one or two couple of eyes sparkling about the thing. So they want to do video, of course, they want to do commercials, they want to make money, but there are every year there are a couple of person that don't know anything about audio documentary, and then they get interested along the way, and then eventually they try to do something. I remember that the thing that made me fall in love with the medium was the straightness and the velocity of it. So I remember that what I wanted to do in my life in high school was to write for screenplays or theater. And I remember that when I met audio as a storytelling medium, I said, oh my God, I can do an helicopter scene without needing an helicopter. I can just use the sound of it, and I can do it like now, like in 2 hours, I can have it done. So I think that it's still fascinating. And then the other side that I discovered in the recent years, especially with podcasting, with this big audience that we never had before in audio, that it's reacting right now, it's to keep people company. Audio is the only format that you don't need a distance to enjoy it, so you don't have to detach from it, like if you go in a movie theater and you have to sit a little bit far from the screen. You literally put that inside your head, and that thing, the relationship that comes up from that gesture of putting someone else's voice in your ears, or like it's used right now, that you wake up in the morning and you just play something on your phone and there's a voice echoing in your kitchen while you are preparing your breakfast, for example. It's something that I feel is very strong. So keep people company, don't leave them alone in their challenges, in their thinking. Especially now, it's very hard time, confusing. Having a voice that keep you company and guide you and stay with you in your dark thoughts, it's something that it's very strong, and I still feel that it's very important to have. So when I teach, I can see that when someone among the students care about the other person, they find the audio as an effective tool to take care of someone else.
It's all about connection, right? Like connecting with other people.
Yeah, but it's a very basic thing. If you think about radio, radio is the first thing that we set up when there's an emergency or when there's a war, because it's something that really works on the connection. Like when you need to talk with someone and not be alone in managing a challenge or run an emergency, you need to create this radio bridge, and the name is not by chance, this radio bridge to connect one another. So I think that every time someone is interested in connecting people and not let them alone, the audio, and if it's like radio, podcasting, oral history, or storytelling in any other form, when it's spoken, or music or other forms, is still very powerful and effective.
Thank you so much, Jonathan, for this. Really glad Banguoja can feature your work, Analog, in this year's program. Thank you for sharing your thoughts and enjoy your time in Venice with your friend's cat.
Yeah, she's just next on my left here. She's sleeping now. Thanks to you, thanks to Banguoja Festival, and I hope you enjoy the piece, or you have enjoyed the piece. And I'm sorry that I can't be there in person, but I'll be next time. Yeah.
One day. Until next time, then. Thank you
Bye.
so much.
Thank you. Thank you.